Here. Just here.
Oh. Kelly, I'm sorry. That's the second time I've done it. I apologize.
Here.
Yeah, welcome, Roger. Roger is replacing Connie, who got to get a really cool job in New York City. Very excited for her. And we're real excited to have Roger join us again. He is a wealth of knowledge, being on council in the past, and I'm grateful to the rest of council for choosing Roger, because I think he's going to be a big help for us. So, anyway, welcome back. Pledge the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You have an opportunity to review the minutes, so I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve as the ones that got sent out today.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, on to the visitors and communications stage. General Services Annual Report. Or we just, yes, go right ahead, have it.
I will keep it brief. Just wanted to make note of a few things in the report. Most notably, the development plans that we had this year. We have 3 in very different stages. Beacon Orthopedic is, for all intents and purposes, done. There's a few finishing touches down there on Alexandria Pike at the bottom of Grandview, but this was a great addition to the city. We also have the Post, which is across from the animal shelter. It's going to be at that house that is under construction, and it's also another great addition to our door district.
Across from the animal hospital.
Animal hospital, I'm sorry. Thank you. And then lastly, 25 North, Fort Thomas, is the proposed restaurant next to One Highland. This has not started yet, and probably is not going to start right away, but this did come through our planning commission and got approval. So 3 different projects in 3 different stages, and I think all will be great assets to the city. Also wanted to touch base on just a few projects that we have in the city. If you look out in our park, obviously it's hopping tonight, and a lot of improvements have gone on in the last year. The basketball court, shelter 3 area, obviously the baseball field here next to us, and the completion of the Alexander Circle Homes. All great amenities to this park, and I know that the council is interested in doing more here, so that's going to be exciting for us. A few other things that I just wanted to mention also were the completion of the North Fort Thomas sidewalk. There are a few little minor details there, but for the most part that is all completed, and every time you drive down there, there's somebody on that sidewalk, so that's a great addition. Lastly, I just want to mention also the Chesapeake speed reduction. There's a lot of improvements down there. We've really helped control speed down there in Chesapeake, and it's been a great addition down there. Obviously, we have several other projects in the report, but those were just some that I wanted to make note of.
I know you, I don't know if you're taking.
No, absolutely.
On the Chesapeake, has there been any speed studies done to show the effectiveness of those?
After completion, Chief, did we do a speed study?
We did a speed study after the first 2 permanent signs went in, and there was a decent reduction in both the 85th percentile and the average speed. We have not yet done a follow-up survey after the 3rd or 4th permanent sign going in. Those are good.
And those devices actually monitor all the time, so we're making that all of those things as well.
Okay. Yeah. It'd be good to know.
On that same note, I don't know if this is in your report, but what do they call on waterworks? Bobbles? Things that are
Bollards.
bollards.
Yeah.
Have those, do we have anything back on that?
I haven't personally got any feedback, but just looking at the intersection and seeing and feeling the sheer, you can't take that turn fast anymore. You have to slow down, you have to go up there. I don't think we've done any speed study there since, if I'm not mistaken, but I will say that has, just seeing and feeling it being down there, it's definitely.
We're
monitoring the fact that they're still there.
I mean, the bollards are there, it's working.
Well,
We haven't had to replace any of them.
every school day I go there for Memorial, and they're still pretty 90 degrees, and not a whole lot of tire marks on them, so.
I think that was a great fix for that issue, and that was a tough one too.
If you navigated coming off of Memorial Parkway, you definitely feel
Yeah.
the idea that you have to slow down and you have to pass that down. And they're still there. So I'm sure that the numbers will be flat.
Good. Thank you.
That's really all I have. I just wanted to note a few highlights, and certainly I'd be happy to take any additional questions if you do have any.
I thought it's a great report, Kevin. There's a lot of stuff going on in the city. I love seeing some of the pictures of the before and after of the houses. I think that's nice to see what people are doing. Anybody else have any other questions?
Thank you for your continued work.
Thanks, everyone. Move to receive the file.
Is there a second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, we're still under visitors and communications. If someone would like to address council, please step up, state your name and address for the record, please.
Mayor, I'm Judge Suzanne Citrullo. I'm your Court of Appeals judge. And I say yours because I am a judge over the entire state, and I have a campaign to keep my seat. Will be on the ballot in November in 13 counties, including Campbell County. So it's nice to see a lot of voters here too. I just was suggested to me by your excellent city attorney that I present myself and tell you all a little bit about myself. I know you have very important business and a lot of people that want to, I'm sure, discuss Fort Thomas business, but I did just want to share that I started my, I moved to Fort Thomas 41 years ago. I lived in an attic apartment across from the YMCA. And then I moved up to Newman Avenue, and I lived on Newman Avenue in a duplex. And then my husband took me to dinner at the Wayside Inn and then brought me over here to Tower Park and asked me to marry him 38 years ago. So Fort Thomas is very special to me. Unfortunately, he's a Kenton County resident, and we moved back over there after we got married. But I serve on a very important court. The Court of Appeals is where I started my career again in Fort Thomas, working for Judge Lester. We were in the building that is called, I think, the Historic Highland Building now, wedged between Lothar's Catering and Marshall Granger Jewelry. So in a lot of ways, I know Fort Thomas better than some of you just because I'm a lot older. But I do hope that you will give me your consideration. I'm going to leave some literature, just a little bit about me and the court, some business cards. I am new to politics, so I would welcome advice from all of you who are serving your city so well. Thank you.
A quick question for you before
Sure.
you leave. Thank you for coming and introducing yourself. I assume you have people running against you. Do you have a primary?
I do not have a primary
So the only time somebody can vote for you is in November.
in November.
And there is someone running against you.
There is an opponent, and it is a nonpartisan. Judicial races are nonpartisan, and of course, as a judge, there's very little that I can talk to you about as far as my views and positions on anything that might come before me. But as I said, we hear cases from the entire state and every type of law that you can imagine. So it is an important court, and I started there, worked for the court for a few years, and then my judge passed away while in office, and so I went into private practice where I've been practicing and running my own small business for over 30 years, and can tell you more about my reputation with the bar, but I think it's important to serve, just as you all obviously do, and Chris Amon can tell you about me too. We go pretty far back.
Great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate it.
I'll just leave some literature there and let you get on with your meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you all.
Anyone else like to address council?
Hi, I'm Joan Ferris, and I live on Birdie Lane here in Fort Thomas. I have two reasons for coming tonight. First is to say thank you to whoever is responsible for putting that stop sign up at the top, the end of Tower Park.
You're welcome.
What
I was
did
just
you?
saying, that was
Whoever
all that guy right
Okay,
there.
that's
so
part
there it was.
one. Part two is who said to put the big bright red lights around it. It's great that the sign is there. Having driven over 50 years, I would have never seen it, but now I did. And of course, that makes it even better, for which I'm grateful as well. My My next topic is the zoning changes. I have so many questions, but accept that this might not be the right venue to expect an answer. So without expecting an answer, I'll just quickly summarize. How did this form-based zoning vision come into the conversation? Who initiated it? Where's the discussion at this point? Where will it end? Is there still time for public input on this matter? The urbanization of suburbia is a concept, a scary concept to me, but it's creeping across our country. The goal is to zone the suburbs out of existence. I'm asking you to please not surrender to this radical AFFH, affirmatively furthering fair housing. I just ask you to represent the citizens of Fort Thomas instead of bowing to those not necessarily on the same page. I encourage you to get this topic, the zoning topic, out to the public through the use of a survey, a well-designed and unbiased survey, prior to any zoning changes. This survey needs to be put into the hands of every citizen in Fort Thomas. Filling out this survey will be then their responsibility. We all agree that you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink it. Your job is to lead the horses to that water. No excuses. It can't be hidden. With that in mind, I offer my time, my experience, and my love for and loyalty to Fort Thomas to help create such a survey. I also have experience analyzing the resulting data and presenting a visual and verbal summation of that data. Please engage the public. Silencing the masses has never worked well. It won't work well here. On the other hand, you'll have a lot of support, a lot more support from people if they are involved in the process from the early stages. And with that, I yield back.
Well, trying to give you a little bit of answers to your questions. The zoning part was part of our community plan to investigate what needs to change in our zoning. I don't believe, now I wasn't able to attend the last meeting, I don't believe that they've come to any conclusion yet. They're still in the investigation stage. There's an expert in the field of zoning who is coming to the planning and zoning meetings and sharing that expertise about the different types of zoning out there. There are two different major types. And yes, there'll be plenty of opportunity for public input. I like your survey idea. It may be too early yet because I don't know that they've come to any conclusions yet, but again, I didn't go to the last meeting.
A survey after conclusions?
Ended in the last meeting. The last meeting, they tabled it until the next meeting to.
Okay, okay, good.
A survey after conclusions?
No. They ask questions about, until they come up with what the zoning opportunities are, so they can ask those questions in the survey.
It's been spelled out on the website. At least that's where I downloaded a nice little box that had the traditional zoning and the...
Versus the other zoning?
Yes.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
okay.
You're welcome to attend those meetings as well, you know. I think they're third Wednesday.
Third Wednesday.
6:30.
In this meeting.
In this room,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I think if you actually go to the calendar too on our city website, that it will list the agenda for that meeting, so you'll be aware of what is coming up, so.
So the April one's gonna be hot heavy about that topic.
Yeah, and anybody that you know that's interested in zoning, that's the whole point, is to have discussions about this, to find out what people want to see and what the proper way to do it. My personal understanding of the difference in the two types of zoning is very, very limited. I don't know all about it yet. That it gives us a little bit more control over the kinds of things that can go into the business district. And I could be wrong about that, but that was my impression in the beginning.
And I'll just add, if you rewind a little bit, just talking about the process a little bit, right now it is before planning and zoning. They're doing research, they're hearing from our consultant about the different types of zoning aspects that could be included. This is a part of it, the part you're talking about. But they're looking at the entire text, all the language in all the chapters. So that's going to take a period of time. They'll be doing that throughout this year. But they're targeting certain topic areas, and that's where you can kind of follow the agenda meeting to meeting. When they are completed with their study, they'll have a public forum where any of the proposed changes would be introduced as something that's being considered as a change. And that will be later this year. And then ultimately, city council has to approve an updated zoning ordinance. So there's an extended process before it ever gets to a point where they're making a decision.
When, I believe, lessons are hard learned, and I think we learned a very difficult lesson with One Highland. Not saying I approve, disapprove, like this, don't like that, different parts of it. By the time there were public meetings, everything was decided. It was very evident in the meetings. You may have your opinion, you may have yours, you may have yours, but it's sort of out of your hands at this point. And I think people felt kind of dismissed, insulted, disregarded, and that's not a good place to be. I'll be honest with you, and this will sound kind of negative about Fort Thomas, but I think it's factual. We all think we're right. If I have an opinion, I'm pretty darn sure, because I lived all my life, that it's right. And I think that others may feel the same way. It's not a quality, it's a characteristic. So with that in mind, coming in after, and you're saying they're doing studies, how much are they studying the people who are fifth generation Fort Thomas people? Are they talking to people who are living in their parents' houses because they want to raise their children with this, in the same house, with the same yard, on the same street, many of the same neighbors, because they value that so? It's one thing to be black and white, we need this much setback, but that's a math question. That's not a heart and soul question. We're kind of heart and soul people here. I didn't even talk to someone, and I'm living on this. Heart and soul people in town here, where people wouldn't go away to college, marry someone, find a different city, and always, many times, come back. Because this is where their soul is. This is where we're unique in that way. I've got friends in Cincinnati, and when I'll tell them, as I was rearing my kids here, well, this happened, and this person stumbled by into this, and she said, does everybody know everything? I said, to a degree, and it's comforting to me. If one of my kids had fallen off of his or her bike, somebody would have said, oh, I know who that is. Now, the bad part is they would have known what I had for dinner last Tuesday, but that's a whole other thing. You take the good with the bad, and the comfort, and the peace, and the knowledge of this carrying on from generation to generation concerns people who see that possibly at risk. When I read different, I don't know if it was minutes, I just found out about this probably a week or two ago, which is a little bit scary as well, that I've got to go on the website to find it. I don't know to go on the website. I hear from veterans, so I have to go on the veterans website to just see if anything is going to change the handling of veterans in America might come up. Just, and do I check on the county? There's no way I have time to check on several, but the fact is, I think something this big, and this would be big, when I saw 3 areas of consideration, and 2 of them talked about row houses, I'm sorry, that's a buzzword. Never anywhere was the word yard mentioned. Backyard, front yard, side yard, but you saw row houses. If that doesn't...
I think you're referring to the business districts, and that was specifically about that. But part of your point is that you want to have this information, and you mentioned One Highland. One Highland met the current zoning. It's one of the reasons why we're investigating the zoning, is to see if there are different ways that we can affect our zoning to preserve the things you're talking about. So it's not like we're trying to change the zoning to allow more and different stuff. It's to change the zoning to have what we want to see in Fort Thomas, and that's people keeping their houses the way it is. The focus of this particular type of zoning is only for the business districts. The residential areas will probably stay the same.
Well, we're looking at different. Yeah, I mean, there's still residential districts. We're looking at different approaches to how to treat in reaction to the idea of the Board of Adjustment of the activity they have.
Yes.
We're trying to tailor it to what our activity is for our residential as well. I'd like to go back to your other point, though. It comes down to this. It's a participation process. I mean, the planning commission meets every month. The information is being posted. The survey is a whole different thing, whether or not there's a survey that can be done. I can share with you the first meeting that this was discussed was one of the best and interactive meetings that I've been to since I've been in the city. The planning commission learning and listening to the consultant, the people in the audience participating in the conversation and having input in the process was a beautiful thing to witness. And that's really what it takes.
I'm
You know,
curious who was
if
in the
people
audience.
don't come and participate in the process, our planning commission members are volunteer members. They're there volunteering, and they're doing it on behalf of all of us as residents of the community. And they can only learn from what people are willing to come forward and tell them as well. So it's a very interactive process, and there's nothing decided. And the community can shape what it ends up being when we get to that point. You're not wrong, it's too late to come to council after they have a completed document that's been recommended by the planning commission, that's been vetted through for months and months at a time. But being a part of the process is really the best way for people to have an influence on how the outcome is. And we encourage that, and it was great meetings that we've had on the occasions that we've had public available to interact with the family.
I'm curious about the public. I've never heard of any of that. And I don't look at it. So I'm not sure how of this, and I'm a little bit uncomfortable saying this, is just my experience. I don't know the consultants. They might be the best on earth, they might not be, I don't know. I have nothing against them or them. What I do know about consultants, and I've worked with many big international companies, the consultant comes in, their job is to change what you've got. Because if they don't change it, the money faucet turns off. The more changes, the more drastic changes, the more dramatic changes take longer, and the money faucet just keeps on flowing. I've yet to see a consultant, and again, I've worked with many, who came in and said, man, this is great. Thanks for having me.
But I can assure you that this consultant working for us is not here to make any specific changes. And what they're being requested to do is share their experiences, like the mayor said, share their experiences. That's their professional opinions of what's going on, and offering that to us as an opportunity to evaluate whether it fits our community. Our city and our citizens, our planning commission, our council will shape the zoning ordinance one way or another, not the consultant. It's not their job to tell us what it should be. It's their job to show us what it could be, and we have to pick it.
And I'd like to point out also, one island almost didn't happen. It was a 3-3 split vote among council. It came this close to not happening, and the mayor had to break the tie. So, I mean, it ultimately, it happens here, you know, whatever is being proposed.
I'm sorry.
Okay. And then also, I've advocated in the past, and I still wish this existed, to where on our website, citizens can opt in for updates in areas of interest to them, if it's zoning or whatever, to be notified, you know, have an opt-in email list where you're notified of the meeting times and what's on the agenda. And I wish we had that.
I'm for that.
Okay, so I looks like we're working towards that.
That seems so simple. It seems so simple. And again, my background is computers. I use a computer. A lot of people don't. You know, a lot of people don't, and they don't want to be obligated to do it.
I think some of the concerns, as I recall last time we talked about it, is sometimes there's an item added to an agenda the day before, the day of even, or whatever, and so it could potentially be a problem if somebody wasn't, they opted in, but they weren't, you know, at the last minute made aware of a change in that agenda, so there's some logistical problems.
And I think it's unfair to, if say you've got an update, so at 4:30, like, well, gosh, we just got this on, you send out an email, people don't sit in front of their computer waiting for an email.
Well, and that's why we deal with the public meetings, and, you know, like we said, the third Wednesday or whatever, when they meet. So I appreciate your concerns, and yes, get involved, come to the meetings, listen to what the consultants say, provide feedback. That's your best way to deal with it. So,
I have
thank you.
one comment with what you said just earlier, Eric, and that is, you said this is just the central business district, this is just part of the three business districts.
No, just the, I think you're talking about the row housing, a specific area, not the whole entire.
Yeah.
Well, what it clearly says in here is that one of the sections is broken into sub-zones, and one of the sub-zones are the streets nearby there. that connect to the,
Oh, you mean Miller and Lumley?
yeah, I would say.
Miller and Lumley have been part of the business district for 30 years, longer than 30 years.
Right, and that's where they're saying those would be really right for
That, well,
small
that,
multifamily and row houses.
and that is a potential to change, but that has been, and my daughter lived in one of those houses, and it was in a business zone. And it's been that way for years and years and years. And if we all, as a community, decide we don't want that to be a business zone down there, that can change. So yeah, but then no, that's not being looked at to change it. It's already that way right now. It's been that way for a long, long time.
But those lines could also be redrawn
Exactly.
to just include the avenue and not, down those streets, and so that's all.
My daughter had to go through a lot just to put a deck on because she was in a commercial zone in a residential house, and she had to go through the entire process. A lot more of a process than someone in a residential zone.
Same with super old houses, I understand, there's some things that have been said. But under traditional zoning, it doesn't mention that. I mean, it doesn't, they clearly said in the neighborhood transition provides a transition from business to residential with a mix of single-family homes, small multifamilies, and row houses.
And that is an option that the consultant is presenting, is rather than say, we're gonna have residential here and commercial here, the possibility of saying, okay, have a transition zone in between. So maybe my daughter's house wouldn't be in the commercial zone now, maybe it would be in a transition zone. That it could still be housing, or it could be a business. Anyway, it's just part of the process. So please attend the meetings and see what's going on, because that's your best way to be able to provide input. Not necessarily to us, because we don't have decisions to make yet. But I appreciate your concern, and thanks for bringing it up.
I have a question for the company, I guess. It's about this process. I mean, I think this process is needed. I mean, evolution dictates this kind of thing for survival. How often do cities like ours go through this process? Change. I mean, because this is an overhaul, right? So
I wouldn't say it's an overhaul. So just to answer your question, we update, by state statute, we update our comprehensive plan every 5 years, which really means that you have to start the process every 5 years. And you can choose as a community to do that as an overhaul, or you can do a perfunctory review of what it is if there's not a lot of significant change. Zoning text can be updated at any point in your process. Typically, it follows an amendment to your comprehensive plan, and if there were significant changes, then you would go back and look at your zoning ordinance and update it. In our case, our zoning ordinance hasn't been updated for quite some time, and in fact, there's issues, and I point to the sign ordinance. There's been Supreme Court rulings that have effectively made some of our language, not just outdated, it's not technically correct. I won't say illegal, but it's not consistent with the present law.
Makes sense.
And so this time, we are doing a more comprehensive look at our zoning text. And it's warranted every so often. So, again, I've been in the city for 36 years. We've done this type of update about 3 or 4 times. The other times, we just make sure that we're consistent with any changes, meeting statutory requirements, that type of thing. So this update is a little more comprehensive. It takes longer, and the concepts that are brought forth don't necessarily make it into the final.
Sure.
Those are just part of the conversations of what's present and what's updated, what other communities are doing, and whether or not it fits our community. So that's not unusual.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much.
Don't fix what's not broken.
Okay.
I'm going to piggyback on what Joan said, and I will start by saying I really appreciate all of you, because I wake up in the morning feeling very safe and secure here in Fort Thomas. And to that end, I don't go on the website. I don't think I have to look under anybody's shoulder. I think you're all perfectly capable of doing that for me. So that being said, I was really shocked in October, one Wednesday afternoon, when I went to my grandson's piano lesson, and the piano teacher told me what was going on, specifically with the row houses, with the putting things downtown and the central business district where there would not be businesses on the first floor. There would be the possibility of having folks work on their computer from the first floor. She was very concerned about that. When I came to the meeting, and I got even more concerned. And the reason for that, you know, the consultant was great, she seemed like a very nice lady, but she did sort of seem like she was driving a train. And I don't know if she wanted to do that or if she didn't want to do that, but it just appeared that way to me. That night, between the piano lesson that got over at 5 and the meeting at 7 o'clock, I called about 10 people I know in Fort Thomas, some who are politicians or wives of politicians. Nobody, not one person, knew that there was a zoning change proposed or that there was a big change proposed for downtown Fort Thomas. I came to find out that the only notification of that, I went back and researched it all. I thought, how did I miss it? How did I miss it? So I went back onto the internet and I saw a little article in Fort Thomas Living, which is no longer existed. Back then it was Fort Thomas Matters, I think. But I had just totally glossed that over. But I'm coming before you this morning not to, say this evening, not to do anything prematurely or not to put anything on your plate that's not ready to be ruled on yet, but to ask that, number one, that every person on the city council seriously look at what's being proposed. I mean, it is pretty crazy. I was a lawyer, I read statutes for a living, and I can't understand a lot of the stuff that's in the consultant's report. Secondly, I think there's been a conflagration of two issues. Issue number one, a zoning change, which Ron, I understand what you're talking about. But issue number two, what's it going to look like after that zoning change? You know, I've been told that people are just afraid of change. I'm not afraid of change, but I bought into Fort Thomas because of what Fort Thomas looked like. And I think most people did that. When I went to the meeting that night, what was proposed as a recommendation was basically the west side of Fort Thomas Avenue, where One Highland is, that all that green space in the front of all those houses would be eliminated, and all the houses all the buildings brought up to 10 feet. What was proposed, and actually I just printed this off the website, large multifamily units, row houses, multifamily with flex spaces, among other things. And you know, I have a house in Florida, and in Florida, if you build in front of the coastal construction line, you're in trouble, big trouble. You're going to get a fine, and you might even go to jail. When I pick my grandson for Johnson for a day, and I go down Fort Thomas Avenue, and when I look at it, it looks like the coastal construction line. Except for One Highland, if you stand down by the city building and you look down, it looks like somebody just drew a line. And on each one of those lines are big front yards. You know, part of the park-like setting that's talked about over and over again in our comprehensive plan. From the consultant's report, she said that the objectives from a community plan for the town center include preserving and enhancing the existing traditional Main Street character with primarily 2- and 3-story buildings. I think our consultant, you know, again, I'm not putting her down, but she's just that. She's a consultant. You're exactly right, Ron. She's been to a lot of communities. She probably got educated someplace like that, where, you know, they put it on a piece of paper, a piece of graph paper, and saw what looked good. That night, she said, this is the October meeting that Ron was talking about, she said that One Highland was perfectly proportioned to how big Fort Thomas Avenue is. And that may be, you know, if you're a DAC and you've got a student project and you're putting this on graph paper, that might look pretty good. But I think for a lot of people in Fort Thomas, I'm sure it's going to be pretty, and it is what it is. But a lot of people, I think that's what it is. And to bulldoze the rest of the west side and put large multifamily housing units and row houses is not the Fort Thomas that I bought into. The reason I'm here tonight is because of what I first said, that I called 10 of my friends in the way of the meeting and not one person knew what was going on. Since then, from October till now, so almost 6 months, nobody I talked to, not one person knew what was going on. Back then in October, when I started telling people, I said, this is supposed to be on the website. I couldn't find it on the website. And I'm going to show you, as I brought my computer tonight, what you got to do on the website, the Fort Thomas website, to get to this. So like I said, most people I know aren't on the website at all.
Mrs. Maggio?
Yes.
Just for the record, she's going to need you to just state your name.
Oh, I'm Peggy Maggio, 37 Schmeling, South Schmeling, Fort Thomas. So here I am on the homepage. So I'm thinking it's going to be right there. So I go down and I'm seeing the calendar, appropriate latest news, taking bids for the CP landscape project. Police department offering free gun mounts. Rumpke accepts puffs. Designated outdoor area, low income energy assistance program, PSA, presentation to council, and then Facebook. That's the rest of the opening page, Facebook. So again, I'm trying to find this information So now I'm like growing up. So I go to general services, I go down to zoning ordinance and comprehensive plan. When I get up, I could fix more, but I get our present zoning. So I'm like, okay, now where do I go? It's not gonna be Renaissance, it's not gonna be recreation, so I'm like, so I go into news. Sure enough, there it is, official zoning ordinance update. I go into this. Nowhere does it say on any of these places so far when these meetings are going to be, when these public meetings we're talking about are going to be. Going into the update, I go down to zoning, now I'm running the zoning update schedule. Now I'm on this pretty piece of paper. To get to it, I have to go all the way to the bottom to see when these meetings are going to be. So Ron, both you and Eric, you talked about community getting input. The community can only get input if the community knows what's going on. So I totally agree with Joan. What we're talking about is issue number 1, zoning. Issue number 2 is what's Port Thomas going to look like if this happens. So I would just ask going to issue number 2 that we have some sort of a print communication because a lot of people just aren't online. You know, Fort Thomas has a lot of elderly people here. And you know, saying that it's going to be on Northern Kentucky Link or it's going to be on our website, which you see what that looks like. I mean, I just don't see what people knowing about it at all. So if we want participation, a meeting like Ron talked about that night, when I came to that meeting that night, I got up right there and I begged them to slow down. I said, please just stop. Nobody knows about this. And when I'm asking each one of you, it's to, number 1, educate yourself, it's going to come in front of you. Number 2, allow the community to have total input in this. And I'm not talking about the ones that happen to go through and find it. And number 3, to have some sort of pre-communication and to have, like Joan said, some sort of survey. We want downtown Fort Thomas to not have front yards. The consultant puts in here that she's talking about an ideal, and I realize it's ongoing, she's talking about an ideal traditional Main Street character, not Fort Thomas Main Street character. And she's talking about a Main Street typically has attached housing. Now, our downtown doesn't have that. You know, you go downtown Wyoming, there's beautiful houses one after another. Hyde Park, once you get past the whole park where there's businesses and you go down Erie Avenue, you have one beautiful house after another. In Fort Thomas right now, we have a lot of green space. What's proposed here, and she does give us recommendations, is eliminating green space. So that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address council? Yes.
My name is Brian Alessandro. I know it's not customary. I'm going to talk about the splash park, but I know it's something you're going to talk about later. I have a couple of kids I'd like to get to bed at 8. If I could speak just briefly on that with the council's grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
By the way, I asked Brian to come and talk about this. He's the cross-country coach, so this would affect him.
I'm a board member of the swim club and also the cross-country and track coach, but 20 years ago I spoke to the board about the restroom that they put in at the park on our course. I was kind of dismissed that day. I was in college, and so years later, more than 20 years later, and many more accolades with coaching, I present to you basically the splash park in Highland Park. We use that daily from July till November. That incorporates our elementary program through 12th grade. There's nearly 170 kids that use that course. The proposed area is actually our starting line. We have meets there. Disrupting that would drastically change that for a state championship program. If you move forward, knowing the little bit that I know and looking through some stuff, how it made out of committee without financials is beyond me, but if I would encourage you to not vote for that, and if you do vote going forward to postpone that vote until more transparency with financials and also the community input is given, because it does affect more than just putting a splash park in for a certain reason. So I live on Green Street, and my house is connected to somebody else, and I think it's pretty nice. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to follow that up real quickly. When I asked him to come speak, it wasn't the fact that I'm trying to squash this as much as how passionate I'm about it. I just think we could do more to make sure that we're representing the parks that will be affected by this, so that we're not losing it, so that they're aware of the situation.
We put quite a few, a couple of my parents have championed a lot of the trail work with Mr. Hill, and it's been great, and it's been more usable. So like, as those trails develop and get more usable, we can use that space for meets and things, you know, and, you know, that sort of thing. But as a board member of the swim club, I'm not gonna comment on that because Bob's not here. But, you know, it is something passionate for me, and I hope that you guys see that, so.
Brian, I have a question for you. You said it's where you guys, where this is proposed is where you start.
Like start and finish a race.
And my question would be, up until last year, where this is proposed didn't exist.
It didn't exist, so we didn't host meets there because the Gaga pit area used to be a start line. That was taken away. Before that, it was where the restroom was. That was taken away. There's nowhere else that has enough space to house runners to have a starting line. So when that was taken down and made into green area, I thought that was a terrific thing for our athletes.
With the field, because this is going in one spot, and then there's a proposed green, just open field to the side of it. It's
I'm just
a pretty
thinking
substantial
about
field.
Well, there are a couple things about that. You know, if I have 170 kids at practice through the summer, they're going to go straight down to that and run it over. It's going to be crazy with people. But if I was to have a contest there and there are community members and stuff there, it logistically wouldn't be possible to do that. There's not enough parking there. You know, with the space currently there, if you have a bunch of community members in the parking lot or field space, there's just not enough room. And there's no other grass area in Fort Thomas that we would be able to host a meet, which is a fundraiser. And, you know, we're not a major sport, so we don't have a lot. We kind of make what we can to do what we do.
Is the parking problem if people are going to be there using the amenity along with the meet, or just you can't have anything down there? It's not going to be enough parking. I'm a little confused.
Well, we have used the swim club in the past as an overflow, but I'm just saying the volume of people going to a certain space that is now empty. You know, with your cars driving down there and such, it just would create a logistical problem. You're talking about hundreds of runners, hundreds of cars and things.
Yeah, you're talking about hosting meets.
Correct. Now, also with in regard to practice, our elementary kids are dropped off down there. That's where they start, you know, their practice. So you're talking about an additional traffic with little kids running around as well. So.
Right, how many meets do you host?
During the pandemic, we had 6 that season.
In a normal season, you don't host that.
We will. We will. That area I was told was going to be turned up and made a little bit nicer, and it wasn't. So, you know, for the, you know,
Well, the field area is not tall. I ran cross country 100 years ago, and we used to travel every weekend to go to meets. We hosted very few meets.
with what the pandemic has given us, with lack of bus services and things, it would behoove us to create more opportunities for our kids at home.
Can you do lots of trail systems at all?
Yes, we have. I mean, the routes are, and I mean, I literally had a heart attack down there mapping out routes. And so, like, you know, I'm dedicated to making that, you know, 2-3 miles. I'm not doing that. But
would we be able to work anything if the splash pad does go in? My whole point of this was to make sure that your considerations were taken into.
Well, I think in addition to my considerations, it's more of the financial thing. I think the proposal is $500K, but you know, there wasn't a whole lot of financial that I saw anyway. Going forward on, you know, yearly finances, monthly expenses, and things of that nature. I just think maybe the community needs a little more input and more info before, you know, due diligence is said.
Yeah, and I know you're going to leave, so I'll cut to the chase on part of my discussion for recommending, because we just had a committee meeting to talk about this. And the community input, I mean, this has been discussed for almost 7 years. So it's taken almost 7 years to get to this point. And we just saw first version of drawings last week. So it's.
What's the dimensions on size?
I
didn't see that
I don't even think we have, the dimensions already written out. That's how new this is. We don't even have, not new, but that's how fresh the drawings are. I didn't even ask for dimensions. So it is something I talked about prior to the meeting today, though, to make sure we talk about the scale of it.
I would suggest pushing it back and not earmarking that money right away and to get more info.
Yeah, so my point is, we've been working on it for 7 years.
Yeah.
There's been a ton of community input on it. It was probably the #1 topic in the rec department.
Nobody called me.
Right.
The rec coach of the cross-country team or West Caldwell.
Well, in all fairness, we've been talking about it for 7 years. We've had plenty of opportunity to participate, right? So, but it's been vetted out, it's been discussed, it's been on, there's been boards put up at farmers markets, it's been on the website, it's part of the community plan. There's been numerous discussion points on it. Now we're at the point where drawings have been made, so we've invested some money in drawing parts. Now is when we can take more feedback on specific location or specific size or specific amenities. And if you have interest in that, please join us at the rec meetings, because we're not moving forward with anything besides the next step in the process. And there's still more steps in the process.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to postpone that, all of you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address council?
Katie Beck, 264 Sergeant, and I bet you guys think I'm going to talk about the skate park, but I'm not. I do echo everything he said. By the way, I've been in the community my whole life. I moved away, came back. I've been here 7 years, and it takes a lot on the website to find the information you're saying about meetings. A couple of us had some emails back and forth talking about rec meetings. I've looked for them. They aren't posted a month ahead of time or a couple weeks. You said by statute it is 24 hours or days to weeks notice. So I mean, I don't have time to look every day to see if there's or when there's rec meetings. Like, look, oh, what's the next month? It's not consistent. So when you say come to meetings, I work late evenings, so if I have to take off, then it's. But when it's 24 hours is what you guys say has to be done, or a couple days, it's nice.
So you would like that opt-in?
I 100% would like to opt in, because I can't, what essentially you're asking me to look every day to see when something was posted, because it's not an all the time event. But I'm actually not here to talk about any of that.
I do believe that stuff is coming down the pipeline.
But I mean, here's a really, really, really big thing for our community that is happening that it's hard to find out or be part of, because, so if it's coming down, like he said, postpone it then, because not everybody's aware or can't get here because it's not posted at a relevant time. Anywho, I'm not here for that. I think a lot of you got, I'm here to speak for my husband. He gave me a piece of paper. We are talking about the Lesser Celandine that I think he emailed through a lot of you. He had to work this evening, but I came right after work. But the hope is to get this kind of recorded and then maybe next meeting talk about finances for it. So I'll just read what he had to say. I'm reaching out to you to make you aware of the growing issue at Tower Park. Currently behind Mess Hall, Lesser Celandine is taking over the forest. Lesser Celandine is an invasive species which outcompetes almost everything around it. I first noticed a clump of it, he first noted 4 years ago. It was small and now it has exploded. Most of the area behind Mess Hall is covered. There are small clumps on the trail system behind the newly renovated military home. Tower Park is one of the better parks in greater Cincinnati area for wildflowers and birding. There's good diversity and abundance. If these species are not dealt with, it will soon take over the entire forest and outcompete the species that citizens enjoy every spring. I have seen this scenario play out over and over in other parks in Cincinnati. The entire river section of Otto Armleader Park is covered in Lesser Celandine. It's outcompeted almost everything. Now you only see a carpet of Lesser Celandine. The forest of Lake Isabella in Ohio has suffered the same fate. Also, Moreover, California Nature Preserve, the sections of the park are entirely covered. They are working to remove it, but because they waited so long, it's taken a lot longer and a lot more finances. The beauty and health of that forest has been demolished. He's included links, I think, to you guys of what it is. We do have some contacts with the UK Extension Office. The woman who's been studying it, she's going into labor any minute. So I think we need to contact other people if you guys want to part with him. I'm sure he's fine with that. We're fortunate to have access to the natural beauty in our city. Please take this seriously and act very quickly because it is starting to spread very, very quickly. Pretty soon, if we wait another year or two, it's going to be completely covered, all these park systems in it. And then also, because I know how passionate he is about this, people travel all over to come to the trails because of the birding and the wildlife and the plants that come here. I asked him to share with Katie Spicer he takes nature photography. We have an abundance of beauty back there. So if it's not taken care of, who cares about anything? People aren't going to come to the parks because it's going to be covered in weeds. But questions, I have no idea. My husband is an environmental science teacher. And then he teaches at Thomas More, but he's a high school teacher mainly. But he has a second master's in environmental science and zoology, he knows too much about this. He could point to every single wildflower out there and let you know exactly what it is, where it comes, every bird, every species, everything. Yeah.
I would ask that you, next time, I'm sure you're working with Cora and the Conservancy group. I'd love to see what you guys think about how to address the problem, and then maybe we can put it in and see what we can do.
Yeah, Chuck Keller couldn't attend, and somebody else couldn't attend tonight either, but he wanted it on the books so that moving forward, I don't know if you guys can talk about money, or I hope that you will do something about it.
Katie brought it up last week
at
our rec meeting, and I know that it's on Ron's radar because of that. So Katie,
Did you get I answered the email.
Oh, this is his stuff, but he just wanted me to kind of bring it to the meeting itself, so then it's
I brought it up to the conservation yesterday.
Awesome.
And trying to find some to point it out, and I'm sorry I leave my father passed away Friday, and so I couldn't stay. But I wanted to bring it up because yes, I jokingly said I know we can get rid of it by bringing in some kudzu. And that would solve the problem.
That might have not been funny to him. I'm sorry.
It was funny to you, wasn't it? I'm serious.
But really, if you walk back right there, it's all covered in green right now. I think it's starting to flower.
The reason I made that joke is it's like kudzu. People thought it was going to be something fine, and it's literally taking over.
Yeah.
We definitely don't want that to happen.
Yeah.
So we will be on top of it.
I did stay that was a challenging walk, 2 people like you bailed, like 3.5 hours and rock climbing and stuff. But I did stay and we did find some.
Oh, you can't not,
Yes, and I mean, so the Conservancy is aware and concerned, and so is Cora. And so I know there's 3 ways to eradicate it, either with a chemical or black blanket, or to physically pull it, but physically pulling it.
If you don't do it correctly,
right.
Yeah, and the UK Extension Office, I think they're doing significant research on how to do it correctly, but it's going to cost money, and we're probably going to want professionals, or professionals to teach. I know he said he doesn't want the chemicals.
And it's like 83 acres.
But right now, it's just in certain areas, so it's not fully structures.
I know, but I'm grateful that you all brought it to our attention now, so we solve the problem before it gets worse.
So I will talk about the skate park and all this, the development. I wasn't going to, but this and the beauty of these parks are why my husband and I I'm more passionate than him verbally, but he is in his heart. But this is why we care, because this stuff is, you can't ungrow it. There's foxes that live down by our house where the skate park can finish. I mean, there's beautiful animals that live there, and they can be gone. But thank you for taking it seriously. Be in contact with him because I don't know anymore. That's all I got.
Thank you very much.
Would anybody else like to address council?
Yeah, I would. My name is Elizabeth Allegrini, 45 Lockwood Place. Ken, I love your thing about the opt-in. I've been saying that, we need, and then I do have a question. I've been given different answers regarding the commission meetings that are being held. Is that something, when I hear you guys talk, that the people in the audience, that they can interact with the commission members? Okay, so I was under the impression that was not allowed, so I'm glad that was clear.
They're public meetings. And
yeah, I just didn't know. I was told that was something you could come and listen and not.
There is a difference between public meetings and a public hearing. Now, a public hearing will occur at some point during this whole zoning thing, and that will be very specific to gather input from people, and sometimes we have to put time limits, 2 minutes per person or whatever. normally in a public meeting, it is mainly observations and watching, but I haven't been to a public meeting yet that people weren't interested in hearing what people had to say. Now granted, they have an agenda they have to go through, so they don't want to spend the entire time just hearing a lot of complaints about things, but certainly having some feedback during meetings like this, especially answering questions. If a consultant is making a presentation and you're at a meeting and watching and you have a question, absolutely.
So then I have another question, Jeff. I think that you met with swim club meetings, and maybe Mayor Hodge, you met with some of the swim club board members. I think it's one thing we need to be cognizant of is that we have to avoid conflict of interest where we have, spouses serving on swim club board and we have council meetings. So I think we have to clearly define those and kind of like keep those things separate.
Yeah, so for, my wife is on the swim club board and her and I do not discuss.
I'm not talking about discussing, but.
Ron and Eric met with them, I have not met with them. If you're talking about the splash pad, that had nothing to do with it.
Well, I know you're the head of the rec thing. I know I'm not accusing you of like going home and talk, and you're not to talk about it and discuss what happened. But I just want, kind of want to get that out there that we need to, make sure that happens. So there was one other point I was going to make, but I can't remember what it was. No, so I just think that one thing, and I've been saying this, and Melissa's been great. I've been calling her, about agendas, because I have trouble finding those. And I do think, and I know that the website, but anything we can do to kind of like push that thing forward so that we can get, the information needs to be out there to the citizens. Because Ron, you do a great job there, but if, you're talking about, people, coming to the meetings and participating, but if people don't know about them, I bring up stuff too, and they're like, what are you talking about? I don't know. And I'm like, well, didn't you hear? And they're like, no, we didn't hear. So I think we just need to do a better job of getting the word out. And I'm not sure the best way to do that, but that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Anybody else like to address council?
Could I just point out, while we were talking, I'm sorry, on the calendar, Joe, I think I said part of the problem. On the calendar, there wasn't an entire year. No recreation meeting is on there, and no planning commission meeting is on there. I went to look and see if there's anything about what's happening with the rec. I don't see it under general services. There's a.
We don't have another meeting scheduled yet.
Okay. Well, planning is planning commission is not on here.
Planning commission meetings regularly every third Wednesday. It should be listed as under planning.
Well, Ron, it's not on the calendar, and I think I understand you, and you understand that, and for the bread and butter for Thomas Citizen, I never even knew there was a planning commission to October, so just let me know.
Thank you.
Hi, just really quick, I'm sorry, my name is Katie Spicer, 229 Sheridan Avenue, and also I'm speaking for Nathan and Lindsay Sheets. They're the cross-country coach for the Diocese of Covington. We also use Highland Park for our running spots. We have runners from K through 8th grade from St. Catherine, St. Thomas, and St. Therese, and we practice there twice a week, and we also hold meets there. So I know that we would really love, we're very small, we're not large, but we would really like to be a part of also when they figure that out, because they also do use the space, and they do go to the Highlands grade school meets as well. So thanks.
So I have a question. So you've seen you were at the rec meeting and you saw the first edition rendering picture of potentially where it's located and scale.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on what you saw and potential options of still having the necessary space for you guys?
I think that it could be possible. I just think that has to kind of be collaboratively done. Also, though Brian's meets there is a lot of people there. It is a lot of parking. It is a lot of overflow. I'm just so a kid in the street because people just speed through there, and all the parking is right by the street. So I don't know what that would look like. I just think that, I know that a lot of the park space, if you don't use it, you don't know what happens there. So when we go to our park, we can just get rid of that, you're gonna use that, and that's where the farmer's market is. Where, we don't need that, so, that's where they have football practice. So I think that just being aware of who who utilizes the space would be really great in that, like moving forward with anything, because they do use it, and it is, like I said, they practice twice a week. Well, we do. They practice it every day. And we're trying to grow the programs, and I think it'll be really hard if they struggle with locations and where to put things, and that's just.
So what did they do before we filled the hall in?
So when we ran with the little kids, because I can only speak through K through fifth, because my son was in K, and they run from Highland down to like the baseball field and everything through the grass. Then they go through the trees there in the back behind Shoulder 2, and then they come up that way, and that's their finish and start line. Before the start and finish line was by the street, because that's the only straightaway. So I think the idea was that they were going to try to move that down from the street, and that would be like directly in part of the rendering of the splash pad. So I don't know how that would work. But again, like looking at it there isn't the same as standing in the park and seeing. You know what I mean? So I think that Brian is well within like right now trying to figure out how to put it so if it goes there, all collaboratively work together.
Yeah. So if the biggest issue is parking, so what if I'm hearing you correctly, so initially we started off by the go-go or BOGO or whatever that came from, and now it's gone.
Right.
And then it was moved somewhere else. The start point was moved somewhere else, and then now it's moved down to the lower pit. Is that correct?
That's where, like, yeah, and they come up that hill there, right there, where there's steps there now or
Is
something.
parking
like
the issue? Is that what's going to be the problem down there?
No, I just think that there's a lot going on in a small space like that. Small playground is there, and the bathrooms are there, so it's just like a lot. The road runs right down it, and then so I'm so sorry to bring up problems without solutions, but it's just something to be aware of that, and it's really neat to see the kids get to participate in something like that. So I would hate to lose the interest that's really compounding, especially due to COVID. Sorry, we also started in a running group before Thomas. So, but I don't know. I mean, like Brian was saying, I just think that there's a lot of working pieces that can come together to figure out.
It's a good conversation, and on my own point, I think I maybe offended Brian before he left, and that wasn't my intention, but cross country has been going on there since the 70s, and there have been different amenities in different places, and part of the charm of it, if you will, is you can adapt your course to fit the spaces. I mean, we host NKU's runners in Tower Park all the time. So they come here, they're part of their team, and they find places to run, to practice. If it's intentional to try to make sure that some of those areas are preserved,
and that's like
I think that's a
struggle.
good thing. But for runners and for a course, I mean, I ran cross country in high school, and I think I ran one meet at Highland Park Avenue. And so we typically don't, that's what we practice, we don't host meets there at a high school.
I don't know, I've only ever been to the grade school meets.
And the grade school meets have been going on there for a long time, but the amenities have changed over the years to adapt to the space. There was no dog park there, so the fencing wasn't there. The baseball field wasn't developed the way that it was, but you just adapt the spaces, and part of the extension of the trail system is that runners can actually use the trail system that way. And that was intentional as well, to try to extend the area that they can run in the wooded areas. So I think the point is, making an intentional effort to maintain some type of continuity through the park, but it is competing with a lot of things.
Yeah, there's just a lot.
The Frisbee golf course, for example.
Yeah, well, they don't like it up there either. They don't like having cross country there either. So, but yeah, but I think that COVID really taught us a lot too. That's the direction of people going, is they're looking for more things outdoors for their kids to do in like a space like that. So green space, I'm always going to be an advocate, is a multi-dimensional space that many people can use at different times that isn't marked for one thing. So I'm always going to be an advocate for the green space.
And we did create, and you've seen it, that massive nothing area that's just grass.
Yeah.
It could be used as a practice field, could be a starting, finishing position for track, could be whatever. So whatever we want to use it for. So what I'm taking away from this though is the parking issue for track meets.
Well, it's cross country and it's
Cross
not
country, sorry.
necessarily just parking. It's just that, like, all the upgrades to Highland Park have just made it really difficult to give runners a grass path to run on.
Well, we created one.
Well, like I said, I just think that looking, like sitting down, like especially with Brian, and really creating a good pathway that would make it work for everybody. I personally don't know any of what the starting over. I'm just a volunteer, so that's just kind of what I'm just saying. Like,
Maybe we, we'll talk about this during my thing, maybe we get Brian and walk it.
That was my point to ask Brian to come up here. It wasn't, we had a discussion the other day, we get into it.
Thanks, Katie.
The discussion the other day for Parks and Rec was the earmark, this money to go towards the project. And we'll get into it a little later, but my thing is, I think we should be, I personally like to hold on to until we have, I think we should have meetings with everybody that would involved to see that, make sure we're using it, utilizing the space as good as possible, and have a complete plan before we earmark it.
Well, if we have meetings with everybody involved, we have to have meetings with everybody.
Well, I'm talking like Brian, the swim club, her running crew, so we can just make sure that that area is best utilized so they don't lose their space, and we can just move it or tweak it instead of just earmark money when, like you said, you don't even know the dimensions.
Yeah, that's the part of the process is you earmark the money and then you can take the next step to figure out what you're gonna do. Just because we're earmarking X amount of dollars doesn't mean we're gonna spend X amount of dollars. We're gonna move forward. Before the next step.
There's 6 council members, and never mind.
No, I don't understand. Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying there's 6 council members, we all have a voice, and somehow, I won't go on, never mind, I'm sorry, I'll withdraw my comments.
Is there anyone else who would like to address council? We'll move on with the agenda.
I have one.
I will, please. Thank you.
So, I'm Mike Kleins. I don't live in Fort Thomas. Do you still need my address? I can give you my old Fort Thomas address.
I'll take your current.
So it's 5 Harvard Court, like the University, Alexandria. So I didn't come here expecting to speak. I attended your joint meeting, the City Council and School Board, back in December to learn a little bit more about Fort Thomas. And then when Suzanne spoke, I thought, well, I better speak. So first, good evening, Mayor. Good evening to the City Council. Mayor, I'm sorry about the loss of your father. And I do want to thank you for serving. When you volunteer, some people will say, put your money where your mouth is. Some people will say it's more valuable to put your time where your mouth is. So I know as city council members, certainly put your time where your mouth is. So I appreciate that. So why am I here? I want to learn more about what's happening in Fort Thomas because I'm one of the Republican candidates for Joe Fisher's House of 68 spot. So I've lived in Campbell County all my life. I lived in Grand Slick for 20 years, Bellevue for 5, Fort Thomas for 3, Cold Spring for 5, and then Alexandria for 12. And I thought, well, you're going to see my picture everywhere for the next 2 months, and you're going to get mailings from me for the next 2 months, and you're going to hear from me for the next 2 months. So I thought I would take this opportunity for you to meet me. This is your meeting, not my meeting. So I'm going to open up to any questions. If not, the only person I met on City Council has been, I met him at a happy hour at Midway Cafe, so I think I'm going to like the City Council. So if no one has any questions, it was a pleasure meeting y'all tonight, and thanks for the opportunity for me to.
Yeah, thanks for introducing yourself. I'll ask you the same that I asked her, the judge. You have a primary.
I do have a
correct?
primary.
And the primary is when?
May 17th.
See, a lot of people don't know that. A lot of people don't vote in primaries, and that's an important message to get out. That's why I wanted to say it. And I assume you have opposition in the primary.
I do. There are 3 of us.
Primary. Okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
Appreciate it. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council? Okay, we'll move on with the agenda. We're down to reports, boards, committees, and commissions. We'll start from the report from the Finance Committee of Council.
Thank you, Mayor Hoss. The Finance Committee met a week ago today, April 14th, and the committee was joined by Mayor Hoss, several police and fire department employees, and city staff who participated in the discussions. The committee continued its discussion on the allocation of the American Rescue Plan Act funds. The Department of the Treasury's final rule on ARPA, the acronym ARPA, the Department of the Treasury's final rule on ARPA funds issued earlier this year eased the restrictions on the expenditure of those funds. While the original 6 categories discussed earlier remain in place, their scope has been widened in such a way that most expenses incurred by the city in the normal course of business are now eligible uses for the ARPA funds. This is great news. City staff prepared a preliminary spreadsheet of potential expenditures and projects, ranging from infrastructure projects to business grant programs to premium pay for employees. This initial list served as a guide for the committee's discussion. Each item on the spreadsheet was discussed in detail with the mayor, council members, staff, and public safety employees weighing the positives and the negatives of each possible expenditure. Specifically, Economic Development Director and the Renaissance Manager, Chanda Calentine, outlined 3 grant programs, each of which benefits a different group of local businesses. First, the original Grow Grant Facade Program would be expanded by increasing the funding to $120,000 for the next program year. Second, an additional $120,000 would be allocated to an interior upfit program with an eye towards interior renovations and projects that the facade program does not cover. Finally, the city will create a rent subsidy program that offers rent assistance to businesses which are opening in or relocating to Fort Thomas. This grant would also be in the amount of $120,000. After much discussion, and in light of the fact that these expenditures falls under the original 6 allowable ARPA uses, the committee recommends that staff finalize the programs and the $360,000 be allocated for implementation. The group also discussed the replacement of the main playground structures right here at Tower Park, including the addition of a splash park / spray ground element and the reworking of the site to meet ADA accessibility requirements. It was agreed that this use of funds would allow for a much needed upgrade of an area that has seen significant use since the beginning of the pandemic for both Fort Thomas families and families from surrounding communities, as well as creating a more accessible space for those with special needs. This expenditure also falls within the scope of the original ARPA guidelines. As such, the committee recommends that staff continue with this project and that a total of $809,000 be allocated for implementation. That equipment is not cheap. Also discussed was the resurfacing and redeveloping of the recently acquired parking lot behind the Highland Building at 18 North Fort Thomas. As this area is crucial to the continued development and success of the Cultural Arts District, the committee recommends that funds in the amount of $235,000 be allocated to resurface and upgrade these parking facilities. And I'll just add to that, that's a critical element to the entire central business district, the changes and the evolution going on there for the better. Finally, the group discussed the subject of premium pay for city employees. Representatives from the city's public safety departments were on hand to answer questions from committee members and city staff. After much discussion, the decision was made to table this item pending further discussion and research. In closing the meeting, the committee directed staff to continue researching additional projects and potential expenditures. It was agreed that the group should reconvene prior to the April meeting of council for further discussion on the subject.
Good report, thank you. I entertain a motion.
I have a
questions.
Yes, I'm sorry, but I'm on board with everything because everything else has been a work in progress. But we learned about, I'm not anti-business, but all the $360,000 of the Grow Grant related stuff. We got the details at 4 o'clock today, and I don't think there's adequate time to make a decision like that right now. So I would move for acceptance of everything, but to table that portion.
Is there a second to that?
I would like to talk about this a little bit. This is one of the issues why Jeff and I had a discussion beforehand, because I shared some information on this page about the grants to somebody because it wasn't made aware of this. We have several people here looking for more information, and all the agenda says here is report from finance and report from recreation committee, if I added this up correctly, along with the $500,000 that they want for the splash pad, that's almost $2 million that the public really wasn't made aware of. So how are they supposed to give their input if they're not aware of the situation? I think it's embarrassing that we would not allow them to have their input if they didn't know this was coming up. I think we should be mindful of the information we get out there, because this doesn't feel right to me that this is on here without that.
Well, I think everything else that was presented, we have been well aware of, and it's been ongoing for a long time. But all of this is relatively new, and I'm not saying I'm against it, but I'm just saying we haven't had adequate time to authorize.
You know, it's one thing to approve this money because we've been discussing it. I'm just not quite sure. I feel comfortable because I don't know. I know that we've talked about it, but you know, the details behind this or what's going on. So we're working $235,000 to do that, and I haven't seen the final plan. I know we've seen 3 different options for how we're going to get it. By the way, I'm for the park and I'm for this stuff. We have 3 different options on how we're going to get access from Highland on up. We own a house on what's the name of that street? Where
James?
Well, not James. What's the name of the street?
Montvale.
Montvale. So are we going to make it one-way in or out? Are we going to get rid of the house? Are we going to keep that apartment?
With all due respect, I do have to say, I don't disagree with all of your comments, but we did have the Finance Committee meeting, which was advertised, we had a week ago.
Sure.
We discussed all this. We discussed the Montvale, the several options that are available there. We didn't make any decisions. And just for the community to know too, I mean, I know this is a lot of money that we're talking about. This is very, and I think you guys have heard this. People who've been to council meetings have heard this before because we've been talking about it since the ARPA funding came into play. And then when the rules about how we can spend the ARPA funds were loosened a bit. And so we had a very comprehensive, lengthy meeting last week with everybody who we mentioned. And, you know, we're talking about spending, it's a total of $4.2 million that we have to allocate, not this year, and we're not going to allocate it all this year. We don't have to spend it all this year, and we're certainly not going to spend it all this year. But what we're trying to do, just for the community to understand, we've all agreed that we want to have the best use for these funds it's twofold. It's how does it benefit the broadest range of people as a whole in our community? That's one. And 2, how can we spend these funds to have a lasting impact, the longest lasting impact that we possibly can? And so, as we met with our Finance Committee meeting last week, we identified these items that I just mentioned in this report, and we can talk in more detail about whichever ones we choose. But these are the most, shovel ready. I'll use that term, for example, here at Tally Park. It's been in play for a very long time. We want to get started on some of these things that we think are really going to benefit the community as a whole. And these select items are things that the committee, again, recommended. Everybody on council has a vote. It's not just 3 members on the committee. And lastly, going forward, we've got a large chunk of money remaining in this ARPA fund balance that we're going to have to decide how to spend. And so, we've looked at, thanks to the city's help, several different areas that are qualified expenditures where we can use this money. And it's going to be an ongoing conversation, for not just this year, but the couple of years to come. And that's why when we left the meeting, we asked staff, let's continue to research this. This can't be something we just put on the back burner and don't talk about until 6 months from now. We want to continue this dialogue, and I'd encourage the community to be as actively involved in that as you can. And part of that, of course, is keep attending the Finance Committee meetings when they're available. I understand the frustrations with posting and understanding when those meetings are held. I know there's improvements that need to be made there. I know the city's working on that. And I will just say, we don't have Finance Committee meetings scheduled out throughout the remainder of the year. We generally, Ron could knows this more than I do, but we'll schedule, a few months out so that we know when they are, and we try to do it when it fits everybody's schedule best. But if anybody has questions about when particular meetings are, or you're having difficulty finding that information in the interim until we get that more easily accessible on the website, feel free to reach out to any of us. And if we know when the meeting's going to be, we'll certainly tell you. Because I'll speak for myself, but I know I'm speaking for all of us. We all encourage the input. That's what this whole process is about. In regards to the money we're talking about spending here tonight, we follow the exact protocols that are laid out that we're required by law to follow. And I'm, if there's questions or uncertainties or a level of uncomfort, then I'm happy to continue discussing it. But to say that the process is embarrassing, I take insult to that, quite frankly, because we did follow the proper process. And it's really hard to get everybody on board in agreement with, with anything, obviously. But I think the city did a great job in this regard. I do think that the information that was put out this afternoon, I didn't realize that we hadn't, in regards to the $360,000, it would have been ideal for that to have been made more available at an earlier date. So if that's a hiccup, I
That's
understand.
what I'm thinking is theoretically we could take whatever line item, if it's the business grants, and just postpone that for action on at our next meeting, as opposed to having to act on it after just having.
I want to step up here really quick because I feel like there's some misinformation, and I've realized since living in Fort Thomas that if we stop and address some issues with correct information, then we can move forward as a collective and just shed some light. First of all, I want to tell all of you there is a website that we have been working on. It has not been released because it doesn't have all of the correct information on it. It's part of the businesses, it's part of the parks. It's really, that's one of the things we're trying to address, is making sure this information is reaching out to our community, because we do know that there's a hole there. All of you may actually have it from the Sasquatch Centennial, as y'all called it. And that was an app. It's also a website. And our plan, I can show it to you, but I don't want to take time away from right now. But it currently has our businesses. We're at 85%. And we just don't want to put that out there until, again, misinformation leads to confusion. We just want to make sure that we have it together first. So we are working on that. And we're addressing our businesses this coming Thursday, actually, and then we'll be able to move forward. So we'll get that out as soon as possible. And I'm glad to know there's a need for it. Going with the GROW grants, we keep talking about, first of all, there's already a GROW grant, and it's been in place since 2019. One of the things that you're addressing when we talk about the 120, there's already a $60,000 GROW grant. So it is something that's been on everyone's radar. The businesses have been aware of it, they've been using it. It's actually been very beneficial to our community. And with that, that's been an ongoing, and that will be an ongoing grant, as it always has been. That's something that brought on a very long time ago. The additional 60 is what we were asking for, because all of these grants were in response to COVID and our businesses, and looking at, which is very much what the ARPA funds are for. And so we were also collectively trying to look at, how does this affect our community? Where can we put this money that actually will go to good use for everyone? And a lot of that, when we're speaking to these things, these buildings, there are buildings. I've heard and I've seen pictures of this mess hall and of Midway and of Grassroots and Vine, where, they're falling apart, and the pride that you all take in your spaces, that's why we brought this forward. It's just to continue to support what we're already supporting, and knowing that these people need help, people that you frequent, your neighbors. But I just wanted to mention the specific GROW grant because it is something that has been out there. It is something that we've discussed, and this is really just a response to what our community has been asking for. So that was all. I just wanted to mention the GROW grant part. And if you have questions, I'm happy to talk about any of those things from anyone in our community and or council.
So, Mayor, I have, first meeting since welcome back. Yeah. But I actually was on the finance committee for 18 or 20 years, so got some experience with dealing with this stuff. And I must have a complete misunderstanding of what's going on here. I thought it looks like to me, and this discussion sort of confirmed what Chairman said, is that this is sort of rolling. You've got all this money, you've got to figure out what to do with it. There are all kinds of needs, and you don't want to take them all one off. You want to look at the total, and you want to see what people talk like we're authorizing expenditures. That's not what I see here. You got to make budget amendments. You have to come up with plans and specs. You got to take bids. I mean, there's a whole process that you have to go through. This is just a roadmap. I don't see any problem with any of this stuff because we have to move down the road. We can't just keep saying, we got all this money, what are we gonna do with it? I mean, I applaud it. I mean, this is a great,
When you say that, once we earmark the money,
well, it's not earmarked, not even the right term.
shouldn't we be seeing the plans? It's the cart before the horse. So we should
How do
just
you
say.
get plans if you haven't even decided what you want us to do?
We haven't decided
You've
what
got
we
to
want
make a
to do.
decision, make some ballpark estimates, look at the path, look at the money you got. I mean, this is a really great outline to me.
I think it's a good start. I think it's a good outline.
That's
but
all it's supposed to
We
be.
haven't, we can't earmark the money without the plans.
We aren't doing that.
We're not, so we're just gonna spend the money first and then hopefully the
No,
plans.
this doesn't authorize any expenditures. This is, I mean, I guess it's sort of a part of it. I mean, what happens if some of these things run over? I mean, there's 575% of the program, just to take one at the top of the list. I'm sure there's some idea of what it costs. But is it design? Is it bid? Do we really know? What if it's 375? Not likely. What if it's 675? That may have rippled down through this whole thing and things we can do. We just have to start with something, move somewhere. I don't have any problem with this. And Ken, your point is very well taken. When we first did the Grove Grant stuff, we spent a lot of time reviewing that and whether or not it made sense.
So we could line item that and include the Grove Grant, but the two things that we learned about, if we opened our email after 4 o'clock today, at 120 apiece, I don't think we've had.
But what you're saying, what I'm trying to say, I think is consistent with what you're saying is, okay with the roadmap, but we've got to, there's some devil in the detail, we've got to focus on that. In some order, sequential order, Grove Grant would be the first thing, because Chopper, it sounds like that's one of the first things you're ready to go. Let's do that.
I'd be okay with that. I mean, leaving the Grove Grant in, but these other two items that nobody really had a chance to know anything about until late in the afternoon, if they open their email, I would hope that we could, via a motion and approval, just postpone any action on those two items until our next meeting.
I think that we started down this path because we had this discussion and this has been presented. Whatever we do from here forward, it's fine with me. If you want to exclude those, I'll even make that motion because it's not ready to go yet, I don't think.
There are no dates on those. If you looked closely, the only date that is on anything is the Grove Grant, the thing that we already have in place. The other two, we're very much to have this conversation. They're not next week or a month from now. It's
just to echo on to that, just to be very clear, the report from the committee, they did have these discussions, as the chairman stated. The people were in attendance and giving that information. The report is saying those are the projects that came forward to be considered to move forward. There's an entire process to each one of those, whether it's completing the terms of how it's rolled out in the case of the Grove Grants extension, in the case of the central playground, which we're going to hear a little bit more about, is to move forward into the next phases of developing that as a plan. It has to go out for construction drawings, and that's when you start spending. It has to go out for bid. It gets approved by council as a project at that time. So you're not approving any expenditure of money by accepting the report the way that it was presented.
So I'm going to make a motion to accept.
I'm not done yet, Roger.
Well, I'm
not
making
finished.
a motion.
I'm not finished.
To accept the report and thank you.
I realize what we're doing here. We all have a voice here.
I second, Roger.
And so,
Well, let's stop there. If we're talking about motions, there is already a motion on the floor from Ken that never received a second.
I would amend that motion to accept the Grove Grant, but just line item these for action next month, these two
Okay,
items.
whatever that, if that's Ken's motion, then I'll second that.
so are you guys literally cutting me off from discussion?
Yes.
Because-
Wait. The next word I'm gonna say is, we have a motion and a second. Now we have discussion. Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. First of all, I want to apologize to you, Ben. When I said embarrassing, I think it's embarrassing that we put out information that isn't fully there for the public to see so they know what's exactly is on our agenda when they come in. I was not pointing to you specifically for this thing.
And I'd like a point of clarification too, because I thought about this today. So you get, all of this information was discussed and available at the Finance Committee meeting last week. My question is, historically speaking, and moving forward, what is our end game? When we post things on the website and related to council meetings every month, I know we post the agenda, correct? We're not posting our entire council packet on there with the chief's report and everything else on there. And so,
But the agenda should state when we're spending money, especially at this magnitude when it affects the surrounding areas. I believe that wholeheartedly. That when you're spending $1 whatever million we're doing, that it should say what's coming out of finance committee. So if it's affecting the area around them, they're aware. If not, then the people that are from that area have no voice because they didn't know. Maybe they, those other meetings they didn't go to or weren't aware was going to be on that agenda. I was not aware that any of this was being discussed on that agenda on the finance committee, and I was invited to it. And as far as this other stuff goes, Roger, I think you did speak well. I'm just saying that I haven't seen final plans. It's hard for me to earmark money to something where I don't have a final plan to see. And you're saying, once we earmark that money, I know it builds up costs and contracts, but technically it's out of our hands. We might have some say in it. That's not.
We have to put everything on here.
No, once we spend the money, there's no. It's not. That's not spending.
We aren't improving the expenditure anymore. We're accepting the report.
That's not true. We have $809,000 outlaid for implementation. So that's exactly what that says. $809,000 for implementation.
This is not a budget amendment, and it's not an acceptance of a construction bid or anything like that. It's just we have to start.
So
what is it that we have to start?
It says $809,000 for implementation.
And Ken made a good point on something very particular. So let's just do that. Let's move on. Let's start doing the work.
Yeah, motion.
So maybe I'm misunderstanding.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Any other discussion on the motion?
There we go.
You want to restate your motion, Ken, to help clarify?
I would move to accept this report with 2 line items to be deferred until our next meeting for any, to put them back in if approved. And the interior uplift and the small business rent subsidy would be no action until the next meeting.
If I have a question, I'll second that. Whatever, that's fine.
Yeah,
who would look at the Grove grant? What committee is it? So the grant, that's also part of it.
When we discussed it, we had a very in-depth description at the finance committee. And just as a reminder, the way city government works is people out there vote for the people up here to help make decisions because everybody in the city, it's a representative government, everybody in the city can make decisions on everything. Then we have a committee structure. And the committee structure gets it real in-depth on specific stuff, and the committee comes back and makes a report. Whereas the rest of us on council can get all that information. We don't have to get all that information. And then we make a decision based on a recommendation from a committee. We don't have to accept that recommendation, but that's normally the procedure that we use. So we're not doing anything out of the ordinary. We're not trying to hide any information from anybody. We're just doing business as usual. So, I'm going to, yes.
Go ahead. I don't want this Grove grant thing to be offered to the public.
Well, there's the program.
Not the one, I mean the new.
The original
program.
The original program is in place. So all that is just changing the amount.
So there's not.
Right. Yes, because of the demand, and that's what we're hearing, and that's what Chamber reported at the meeting and again tonight. The other ones are not implemented. There's no time frame. In fact, in the draft, you see that it was a February time frame on the bottom of one of them because that's when the first time I was put in the draft.
Okay,
so those are not.
Ken, would you, part of it is to increase the existing program by 60,000.
Correct.
Which I'm good with that.
Okay, so would your motion would say that okay, we'll do the 60,000?
Well, no, I mean, I already
right.
said that.
That makes sense.
The program, okay, we're good with that.
So that one is authorized.
But these changes came in at 4 o'clock, and we haven't had time, and they're very different programs than we've ever implemented ever in our history. And
right.
So may I restate it to help clarify?
Okay.
No, I'm serious. I want to see if I've got it right. You're accepting the report of the committee.
Yes.
And with that report, you're agreeing to allocate the additional funds for the original program. Period.
Increased program. I mean,
it's
been increased.
Period.
Yes. But I mean, Well, I mean, I would like to, I guess, amend the recommendation, or recommend that we amend the recommendation on these two, because nobody's had time to review.
Well, how about
You
this,
just
Ken?
wanna-
How about provided that the
just wanna
specific
take-
program requirements come back before city council? For the two new ones, not the.
Yeah, and they're not called programs, one's an interior.
Whatever
outfit
those
and
are
a small
called.
business rent
Melissa
subsidy.
can get that right, she's really good.
Okay.
I'm gonna say.
Yeah.
So the other one, the reason that we're referring to the other one as a grow grant, the upfit, is because it's the exact same as the current grow grant, except for it's inside instead of outside. Everything else is the same.
Oh.
So I'm sorry if that was confusing, but that's what it is. And then the other one, yes, is.
The original one is a facade.
Yes, the originally, that's the facade, and then this one just addresses indoor.
If we go by Ken's current motion, does that give you what you need for now? And does that clear it up?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's really helpful. I'm glad I don't have my Robert's Rules of Order book in front of me, because boy, have we been doing this all.
Well,
I will have that.
Mayor, let me say one more thing, John. That makes perfect sense to me. Chan's gonna hate me for this, but for the folks who weren't in attendance at the Finance Committee meeting and did not get to hear her presentation, which I know you've also given to the Business Association and probably to every business that you knock on their door through town, use her as a resource, because she has just worked her butt off, and the fact that we're able to give this money, coming out of such a difficult couple of years for everybody in our community, but in this case, our businesses, I'm really excited about it, and Chanda does a wonderful job. She's very engaged, and she can answer all your questions, and I'm very confident and optimistic that we'll be able to meet at the next council meeting and move forward on the additional 2 grants.
Great. All right, any other discussion?
Yes, I'd like to add one piece to the financial committee meeting. There's a high level of discussion here. Federal money that we're working with, not local taxpayer money, in a certain way. It has to be earmarked by a certain date, and it has to be spent by a certain date. And if we don't do those things, we don't get that money. It will be spent by somebody else.
Ron, you want to address that, please? As far as deadlines go?
I can reiterate the deadline. We have received the first half of our ARPA funds, and they are in a bank account, and that's the protocol. They're been dispersed to each community. We'll receive the second half of that allotment in July of this year. Those funds have to be designated for expenditure in compliance with the ARPA final rules by December 31st of 2024, and they have to be spent on those projects by December 31st of 2025.
So we're fine to postpone, some of
Yeah, not postponing, but I said all along, go slow, go slow, go slow. We have. And what you're hearing now is the things that have risen to the top of most immediate need, and the business community is at the forefront, and that's your discussion tonight. Because those are funds that we're feeling like will hit the mark the way that it was described by your chairman about impacting the people that need it the most right now. And so those programs were designed to be able to afford that to our businesses in our community. And the remaining funds have not been discussed beyond the spreadsheet where we've tried to itemize the types of projects or programs that could be utilized to spend those funds.
Right. In between this and our next meeting, if the motion carries, there are going to be questions about the specific implementation of these 2 programs and the time frames, and then, deferring the unused capital back to general funds, and there's all kinds of unanswered questions that we will have time to get the answers. So.
All right. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Kelly? Mr. Henry?
Aye.
Mr. Bennett?
Aye.
Mr. Beazle?
Aye.
Mr. Blau?
I can explain my vote. You can imagine that. I'm a no, simply because I don't like how they were. A couple reasons is one is that they'll 3 of these together. There's 3 different projects. Second one is I don't necessarily believe in a couple of them are out there, but a couple of them I do believe in. I would work further to get those done. So that's why I'm a no. I don't agree with all of them. But I do appreciate everybody's work, and don't take this agenda. I think you're doing a fantastic job. Just because I disagree with a couple of these things or anybody that's done anything that way. So I do think we're lucky to have you. And as always.
Oh, good, thank you. Okay, now we're to the report for the Recreation Committee.
All right, thank you very much. We met on the 15th of March. We had a lot of discussion pieces. I do have a summary here that I'm going to read from, but I'm also going to summarize at the same time if that makes any sense. So, the first item of business that we talked about was the upgrade options for the main playground at Tower Park. As a plan and detailed structure, options surrounding amenities included an adjacent spray pad, potential fencing barrier, improved access point and ADA ramp that originates from South Fort Thomas Avenue intersection. The committee members shared ideas and requested additional options to be presented. So we were presented with a very initial stage rendering of the main play area. Some of the important points to note are the current play equipment is outdated and needs to be replaced yesterday. Not because it's outdated because the play equipment is no longer fun, but it's outdated because the play equipment is not necessarily in the best shape. So it needs to be replaced as soon as possible. And Ben said it perfectly, that stuff is expensive, especially right now.
Only getting higher too.
It's only getting higher. And with that being our main part, Chris is doing a great job of tying the whole park theme all together, and he's got some really good marketing ideas and theme ideas for the park itself too. So we saw some renderings, and he's gonna take our feedback and make some adjustments to it. So along with the park restoration, the play area, this is a project we've been talking about for a while now as well. It's the General Thomas statue to be put in a plaza. This has been deferred, waiting completion of the statue. The base stone, we actually found some base stone that matches, it's the same stone that the tower is made of. So the base of the statue is going to match with the stone of the tower exactly. It's a Dayton stone, it's no longer quarried, but they were able to find it somewhere. So the stone the stone's been purchased, but the statue has not been complete. Is that correct? Correct. Yeah. So we're just waiting for funds for the statue because that is being mostly funded by the private sector. Let's see. So Carlisle Park. So staff recently met with representatives from SD1 and the Kentucky Department of Transportation and the City of Newport to begin design options for the drainage issue that will be among the first items to be addressed. Access points on Memorial Parkway are also being discussed with KDOT. So there's a lot of work that needs to go into the area before we can start doing the fun stuff. We need to fix it before we really lay out what it's going to look like. Because there's a lot of drainage issues that are happening up there. And SD1's going to be a good part of it.
Actually, it's non-drainage issues.
Non-drainage issues.
It's not drainage, that's the issue.
Well, there's the not draining, and there's the erosion piece too. The committee also heard updates on the progress for potential ropes course in Tower Park. Go 8 Adventures has continued to study this area as a potential site, has requested to continue with the design and become the city's partner on this project. It was agreed that the details for this potential project should be shared and discussed with the Fort Thomas Conservancy, Cora, and local business representatives to determine the capability, and a meeting's going to be arranged. So this is one of those projects that we've been working on for years and years and years. We were, Go 8 is probably, or is one of the top companies in the country that provide this type of amenity. And we were very lucky to cross paths with them. Chris Manning did his research to find the best of the best. And they had interest in our location. We came and met with them, had many phone calls, many Zoom meetings with them, and they are interested in working with us. And we're to the point now where we need to make a decision if we want to go one further step one step further in the process. No money's gonna be spent, actually, it's gonna be net profitable for the city. So there's not, we have no out-of-pocket expense at all, and it will be revenue share for us. We have there's no legal ramifications, no insurance claims. The company carries all that. And this company is very environmentally friendly, so part of the process would be to maintain the trails and all that. The next step for us, before we get too far down the process, is to meet with the Conservancy, meet with Cora, and to meet with the businesses to see their interest and take their feedback, and then we go from there.
Jeff, let me interject to add to your report. Knowing what your report said, I was with a short time with the Conservancy yesterday, or Saturday, I guess it was, and I brought this issue up and told them that it's very preliminary. We don't have detailed drawings from them on it's going to go from this tree to that tree and that kind of stuff. But I said, I want you all to think about it as you're walking through this easement down here, walking the trails. Try to picture the idea of maybe there's a zip line that goes from here over to there, down like that, just to get them thinking about it. So I've approached the subject with them, so they're aware.
Yeah, good.
But that's what we have to do.
If I could interject, I mean, in following up with what the mayor just stated, I continued that walk with Cora. It was like 3.5 hours in the woods. And then they today sent me 3 documents about their conservation easement. There's 80+ acres there, and there's a conservation easement. Part of it is for Carmel Manor, and part of it's for the rest of the ground. And there's language all through these documents that state you would need approval from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to do anything obstructive back there, and the conservation easements over the subject real estate were required to permanently protect aquatic resources and repairing forest habitat. It's every one of these. There's just paragraph after paragraph in the conservation easement that says, it can't happen here.
Yeah, and so that'll be part of the conversation. That's why we would have. We never thought that. Well, we never thought. We didn't think we were going to get to this point this soon, because after 7 years of discussing this, we finally put it to the forefront. So we checked the boxes off of the projects that we wanted to have done prior to this one.
Yeah.
And now that we are looking at this, making this a priority project,
I'm surprised they weren't involved in the conversations earlier on, because there's a conservation easement there.
Correct. So all we have that's invested right now are a couple of phone calls with the group.
And I would hope they don't go to any great lengths and
we have no money invested. We just have a little bit of time, staff time, and Eric time. So now the next step in the process is to have them heavily involved. So once we have these conversations, we really let these conversations drive where we go.
Right.
Share those documents with us.
Yes, I think, didn't he send it to you? Yeah, Chuck Keller submit, he sent, because we were talking.
I think it was 4 o'clock today.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, I've got it on printable anyway. But there's a lot of,
There is, Ken, but
yeah,
it was
plus
like,
later.
the conservation easement was actually created elsewhere, as you know. The Conservancy now has that.
Right, so the Conservancy.
And so they're new in dealing with it. But there is language about how certain aspects are being protected, and that was the point of the easement. And everybody knew that. Whether or not this was qualified or how they would ever accept it is all part of the conversation.
One of them required the Kentucky Water Authorization, the Kentucky Department of Water, and then the other one was the Corps of Engineers. And so it's just, I wouldn't want to waste too much time from GOH perspective or investment and thinking it's going to happen, because it's not too likely from what I am reading and from the vibe I get, or however you want to put it, from Cora and the Conservancy. I don't think they're going to be too eager to make it happen.
Well, we'll have that conversation.
Okay.
I think part of the discussion was that we have their approval, so they will talk, right? Is that what part of the
Yeah.
So they'll get together and discuss this.
All right, concepts for the additional parking adjacent to the soccer field and Sergeant Avenue and the potential roundabout at Sergeant Avenue entrance were revisited. Staff reported that the Fort Thomas Independent School District is currently working on concept plans for the soccer complex and intending to collaborate with the city on the parking aspect. There are no immediate projects planned in this area except for the temporary placement of the movable skate park amenities recently ordered at the lower level of the practice fields, and then alternatively located the lower portion of Highland Park and or suitable locations. So we're still not exactly sure where we want to start with the movable skate park, but it's the two locations as of now are the fill at Highland and the crossing Sullivan. And those have been ordered, we just don't have them in stock yet. Details of the potential spray park in Lower Highland Park were shared, including conceptual designs and preliminary cost. Discussion included the concept of a skate park, bike park, suitable in the possible location. It was referred that the community plan located the spray park at this location, and the temporary skate amenities will also be placed there in the future. It was agreed to a 2-to-1 vote to recommend the council to proceed with the construction design and bidding for the spray park amenities. And that is the end of the report from Record.
What's the construction?
Second.
Second. Discussion with construction design and bidding for the spray park. Also, just to get the numbers for down there, what it will cost.
Just to see what it will cost.
Just to see what it costs. Okay. That's why I was glad Brian came and they showed, because I think it's, I drove down there today, it does look great, and there's going to be some great things down there. I mean, I think that, I do want to say, I think when we do work these numbers, that I drove up James, obviously the hill is only meant for one car at this point. Going up the hill, Ron, would you agree? It's pretty tight. Yeah, so I think when we do, we also need to look at how much everything's going to cost down there as a whole. I spoke with the City of Wilder. Nice things to say about their spray park. One thing they did say was their shelters are used quite a bit on the weekends. So I think we need to make sure a full design with shelters that we can rent and everything, so we have a full cost, not just partial on that. So we know exactly what we're getting. So there's a lot to it. I don't know how familiar you are with these, but have you done a lot of research at all about the design?
For 7 years.
For 7 years, did you know? So a lot, down there, the storm warning system had to be shut down. Are you familiar with that? So they have to be shut down like a normal pool. They have to be tested 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and the report has to be made. There's just a lot that goes into it other than just the splash pad itself that the city will be responsible for. Ongoing cost, maintenance chemicals. When this bid comes out, I think we need to have all the information before we get that final decision. It's just not as simple as installing one.
All that information has been presented to us, and there's different kinds of systems.
Sure.
That don't require the testing, don't require those systems, which is the first order. The system that was recommended to us. We actually met with the swim club because they have excess capacity in their pump stations to see about actually tapping into their system, but that would make it a recirculating system, would require the testing, so all this information has been researched.
I talked to this with Bob today. He said he did not feel that was a great way to go. Just say there's just a lot to it. You know what I mean? I just want to make sure that.
What I'm trying to explain to you, Adam, is a lot of this information has already been investigated. We had very thorough investigations involved, so it has been done. We don't really need to do more of that. Those decisions have already been made. So
I just don't know it. I'm one of the ones that go on, so I would like to.
Is there other discussion? We just have a motion and a second to approve the report. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Do you have any motions you want to make out of this proposal at this point?
I think the motion or the what we talked about in the rec committee is to move forward with the next step with the splash pad. And that was discussed in the last paragraph of
Well, I was doing the report separate, so we didn't do the same thing we did with the last one. Would you like to make that as a separate motion to continue?
Yeah,
with the
so,
splash pad?
so I'd like to move forward with the next step of the splash pad in the design and construction, starting the design and the construction. So start to get more detailed idea of where it's going to be located, the scale, the amenities, all those specifics.
Is there a second to that?
Do we need to set a number on that?
Is there further discussion on that?
We need to set a number for that? So we just.
We're not adding a budget to it, we're adding, that's part of what we're asking for, is what it's gonna be designed, what it's gonna cost.
I just didn't know if we wanted to put a cost on how much we spend on finding that information out. That's all.
Any other discussion? Roll call, vote, please.
Ms. Collins? Mr. Penny?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Bowman? Mr. McKee?
Aye.
Mr. Blau?
No.
Mr. Peter?
All right, thank you. We're down to reports of officers. Fire Department monthly report. Chief Amon.
Thank you, Mayor. Since we're coming out of COVID again, we've opened up the community CPR program. So if there's anyone out there that needs CPR class, just contact the station at 859-441-8393. That's all.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the chief?
Move to receive file.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Monthly report from the police department. Chief Kilgore.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief as well. Both of our two newest officers, Jeff and TJ, are doing great, fitting in well with the other officers, and their level of dedication to our citizens is quite obvious. Very, very happy with both those guys. Other than that, I don't have anything else to talk about for my monthly, but I can take questions.
Entertained motion.
Move to receive file.
Second. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. City Administrator's report.
I'll also be brief. We just have a couple of personnel items to report. We do have a pending retirement in the fire department. We do have an eligibility list, so we'll be vetting through our eligibility list to replace them. I should say, one person. We also had a resignation in our Parks and Green space, and tonight we will see the appointment for a replacement for that position. City building update, we do this every month. Progression, they are starting to get better weather to deal with anything that's on the outside. They're working on the curtain wall in the back, which is all the glass in the back. Stairs have been measured for the back entry. Structural elements are starting to all come in the infrastructure. So we're kind of pivoting that corner where it'll start to be finished type work, which will progress pretty quickly. No exact date yet, but we're still targeting sometime in May, at the end of May possibly. The 2022, just a couple of items that you'll see through next month's meeting. The 2022 street program is out for bid, so you'll have a bid opening on those later this month, and those will be brought forward to council for consideration. And then the landscape bids for the central business district and the city building itself is also out for bid, and you'll see that at your next meeting as well. And just to scope that, that's a refresh of the central business district. Believe it or not, Roger and maybe Ken and the mayor, those improvements are over 20 years old. So plants planted adjacent to the street with salt and stray tires and everything else that goes on in the right of way, it's a little tired beyond the areas that were recently affected. And of course, the city building is included in that bid. And then a couple of city projects. We do have the Tower Park swings at the overlook back here. The city crews will be building two open-air pergolas that will house large swings that people can sit and look out over the river. And then the walkway that was discussed, that it will be extended out around the area outside the mess hall that will support the farmers market and some of the other events that we do in the park, and also weddings that take place prior to use of the mess hall for the receptions. And shelter 3, I promised last month, it was the last time I would talk about it, but the fence is there now, so I'm really excited that this thing is actually being done after the amount of time that was spent during COVID and every other challenge that we had there. So we're waiting, and we have received word that our amenities for the park shelter have shipped. Melissa, correct? They actually shipped. Yeah, so. So we actually took delivery. So Pat will be happy that she can actually rent the shelter moving forward, and that project is completely done. And then the last item to mention is the branding process that was discussed at council. And I know a couple of the council members were at the initial meeting with a large group that vetted through the RFPs that we received, and then the committee that is doing interviews started those interviews actually today, and they'll finish tomorrow. So, and then that larger group will reconvene and have some recommendation for council for somebody to partner with, and that's all I had.
I'd like to follow that up. That rebranding meeting was run exceptionally well. You got a lot of strong heads in that room that were there. And I was not expecting it to go as smoothly as it did. I think you went very well. Did a great job there helping. Interjecting when you could, but you didn't have to, because that was nice to see that everybody was on the same page. So I think that's something to be proud of there. Now it comes down to the fun stuff, right? The work.
Okay, we don't have any old business, we don't have any new business. We're down to Finance Committee reports on disbursements.
Report of disbursements February 11th through March 14th, 2022. General Fund, $314,057.40. Public Works KDOT Fund, $58,155.69. CBD Revitalization, $325,325,334.58. Waste fees, $101,919.61. Police and Fire Pension Fund, $1,519.07. Total, $800,986.35. We, the undersigned members of the Finance Committee, recommend that warrants numbered 10752 through 10919 be approved, and the treasurer be authorized to issue checks for their payment. Mr. Henry, chairperson; Mr. Beazle, member; Ms. Kelly, member.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Kelly. Mr. Henry. Mr. Bowman.
Aye.
Mr. Beazle.
Aye.
Mr. Lau.
Aye.
Mr. Peter.
All right, we're down to ordinance, resolutions, and orders. Ordinance 01/2022.
Ordinance 01/2022, an ordinance providing for and ordering the street improvement of Altamont Court from its intersection with Bivouac Avenue to its terminus, Avon Place from its intersection with Summit Avenue to its intersection with Edgewood Drive, Bivouac Avenue from its intersection with Southport Thomas Avenue to its intersection with Bivouac Point, Carolina Avenue from its intersection with Tremont Avenue to its terminus, Garden Way heading north from its intersection with Holiday Lane to its terminus, Glenway Avenue from its intersection with Southport Thomas Avenue to its terminus, Hawthorne Avenue from its intersection with Alexandria Pike to its intersection with the Hawthorne Extension, Linden Avenue from its intersection with Southport Thomas Avenue to its intersection with Carolina Avenue, Linden Court from its intersection with Linden Avenue to its terminus, Rossmore Avenue from its intersection with Southport Thomas Avenue to its terminus, Summit Avenue from its intersection with Grant Avenue to its intersection with Avon Avenue, Avon Place, and Tower Hill Road from its intersection with Northport Thomas Avenue to its intersection with Watch Point Drive, all in the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and all in accordance with the plans and specifications thereof, as submitted by the city engineer and as approved by the Board of Council of the city of Fort Thomas, and further providing that the actual cost of the construction of said street improvements are to be borne by the city 50% and the property owner 50%, and providing for the payment of an improvement assessment.
Move approval on that?
Second. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. Kelly? Mr. Henry? Mr. Bowman?
Aye.
Mr. Beazle?
Aye.
Mr. Lau?
Aye.
Mr. Peter?
All right, ordinance 02/2022.
Ordinance number 02/2022, an ordinance confirming the city engineer's estimate of the cost of the improvement and certificate of apportionment for the improvement of Beechwood Avenue from its intersection with Robson Avenue to its terminus, Kroll Avenue from its intersection with Alexandria Pike to its corporate line with Campbell County, Greenwood Avenue from its intersection with South Grand Avenue to its terminus, Holly Lane from its intersection with North Fort Thomas Avenue to its intersection with Spreadmore Avenue, Mayfield Avenue from its intersection with Highland Avenue to its intersection with Highland Park Drive, Military Parkway from its intersection with South Fort Thomas Avenue to its terminus, North Fort Thomas Avenue from its intersection with Coder Run Pike to its intersection with its corporate line with the city of Dayton, and Robson Avenue from its intersection with Military Parkway to its intersection with South Grand Avenue, all in the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and all in accordance with the plans and specifications thereto, is submitted by the city engineer and is approved by the Board of Council, approving and levying a special assessment against the abutting property owners and providing for its payment, directing the city clerk to publish an abstract of this ordinance, directing the city treasurer to prepare and distribute the assessment bill, requiring all abutting property owners to pay the improvement assessment.
Entertain a motion.
First reading.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm tired.
Me too.
All right, municipal order.
Municipal order M02-2022, a municipal order reappointing Casey Kilgore as police chief for the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and fixing his compensation for the fiscal year 22-23.
Move approval.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you. Next one.
Municipal order M03-2022, a municipal order reappointing Barb Manette as a member of the Fort Thomas Street Commission for the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and setting her term of office.
Entertain a motion.
Who's the approval? For tree commission? I guess, I move approval.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Municipal order M04-2022, a municipal order reappointing Joey Hood as a member of the Fort Thomas Street Commission for the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and setting his term of office.
One more time.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, now we've got some executive orders.
I'll just read all.
Yes, please.
Executive order EA7-2022, an executive order reappointing Kim Recton as a member of the Renaissance Board of the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and setting her term of office. Executive order EO8-2022, an executive order reappointing Heidi Meltner as a member of the Renaissance Board of the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, and Kentucky, and setting her term of office. Executive order EA9-2022, an executive order reappointing Holly Patterson as a member of the Renaissance Board of the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and setting her term of office. Executive order EO10-2022, an executive order providing for and appointing Eric Rootson to the position of Parks and Green Space Laborer 1 for the city of Fort Thomas, Campbell County, Kentucky, and fixing his compensation.
Awesome. If there's no further action to come before council, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Jesus, yeah. Oh, Ron.